Welcome to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm Nicole Eaton, author of the books Rock Your Soul and Rock Your Comeback, as well as an intuitive therapist, and I'm here to remind you of your power. This podcast focuses on mindset and inviting the universe in to create a life that feels so good, so aligned, and so authentic. I hope you're ready. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. Today's episode was so much fun to make. Alex is an absolute joy to have a conversation with, and I know you guys are going to get a ton out of it. We talk about his massive leaps from his darkest black hole moments into creating his own life and creating the power to make his own decisions about what he wants to do with his time. And he's going to walk you through how he did it so that maybe if you're on the verge of wanting to change your life, that you'll feel empowered too. So make sure to listen, to let us know what you think, and to leave me a positive review or share with a friend who needs it. It's always helpful for me to keep this podcast going. If you shout it from the rooftops that you're listening, helps a ton. So thanks in advance for that. And if you're not in the Comeback Club, what are you doing with your life? We've got a boundary setting masterclass coming up this Friday. It will be there until further notice, as with every class that we do. So we have courses on courses, and they're yours for $22 a month. And if you only want to stay 1 month to get all the courses, you can do that. The link is right in my bio, along with my link to buy Rock Your Comeback as well. So I appreciate you guys being here, and it is the season of thankfulness. So I just want to express my gratitude for you and everything you do, and I hope you love this podcast as much as I did. Welcome back to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Eaton, and I'm here with Alex. Is it Povey or Povey?
You got it right the first time. Don't doubt yourself.
Okay. You're from the UK, so I just want to make sure I'm not jacking things up. So
no, it's a tricky
podcast.
one. It's a tricky one. So pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. One of the things that I always ask every single one of my guests is, what is your definition of power? This whole podcast is about reclaiming your power. So what's your definition?
Good question. I've never even considered it, but the first thing that comes to mind is being in control of your own decisions and choices and what you do, where you spend your time, who you spend your time with. I think that's powerful, is being able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. And that's something that I think all of us as human beings are striving for. And that can't always be the case. You can't always be in a position where you can make any decision you want. But one of the reasons why I built my business was to have that power, to be able to make those decisions, be able to show up to a podcast like this because I want to be here, not because I have to be here, because I enjoy doing this, not because I need to do this. Does that make sense?
So power is somewhat connected to freedom for you.
100%.
Having freedom to choose what you want to do and who you want to spend your time with and how that goes.
Yeah. And I consider it power because it's not easy to attain that. I've been in situations during my life where I wasn't in control and I didn't feel powerful and I felt helpless and I felt like someone was governing my actions when I went to the toilet. If anyone's listening to this and they've worked in a corporate organization, I'm basically describing what that looks like, right? So I've been in that position, and that was one of the reasons why I felt so compelled to start my own business is to create the freedom, which is also power.
Yeah. So you help coaches across like multiple continents.
Yeah,
Alex
is
a big deal, right? And we want to pick his brain. And so I'm curious to get us going. You just mentioned like maybe there wasn't a time where you were in your power. Could you take us back to what this other version of you looked like, or what was going on for you?
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. Firstly, when I was much younger, around 13 years old, I was exposed to substances like MDMA, ecstasy, cannabis.
At 13.
And I was at 13, right? Because my two best friends at the time had these parents who were drug dealers, and they were dealing drugs to their sons, and their sons were my friends. Okay, two best friends. And so I was kind of a product of the environment. And so I was taking these drugs and having a great time, experimenting, not really knowing what I was doing, but it was a bit of an adventure. But looking back, I wasn't in control. So the environment was in control, and also the substances were in control, because it got to a point where I wasn't just doing it in that room with my friends. It got to a point where I was doing it alone. And when you do something alone, then that's pretty much demonstrating to you that you're almost dependent on that thing. And now it's no longer a social thing. Now it's almost an addiction. And it was an addiction to a degree, but I think I just had really good willpower to get out of there and change my behavior and change my environment. But looking back, I felt a little bit helpless there. Like I was just kind of like stuck in this place that wasn't really serving me, but then also giving in to my vices and just like going along with it. So that's number one. Number two is corporate. I used to work in a corporate company selling real estate, off-plan property investments to people in the Middle East, China, big investors. And it was kind of like one of these boiler rooms. If anyone's seen The Wolf of Wall Street, it wasn't so dramatic or interesting, but it was just like a big office full of salespeople and just literally on the phone selling all day, every day, trying to get, I don't know, 200 outbound clicks, trying to rack up 3 hours of call time. And if you're not, people are like, what's going on? Because it's like a big screen, there's a board. Why are you falling behind? Why are you not hitting these stats? You know what I mean? And someone's just like breathing down your neck. And I just felt a little bit like a number. And I also felt a little bit like I didn't have control of my day. They dictated when I arrived, they dictated how long I had to spend on the phone. They dictated how many clicks I had to make. They dictated how I acted, how I dressed. Like I was literally being told what to do. And everyone's like, well, duh, that's me, right? That's what working for someone else looks like. But it was so restricting that I did feel a bit helpless. And that's why once I had had enough, I was really looking for an out and an opportunity to do something else and be more in control of kind of my day to day in my life.
Yeah. Wow. Those are incredible stories. I'm just trying to envision being 13 years old and being exposed to like these. This isn't like a little weed. Like this is
no, that's where it began.
Ecstasy, you know? Yeah. And the really important thing about like a setting like that, and I want everybody who's listening to think about the environment. You said a lot about an environment was controlling me. And I think so many people listening can relate to that, whether they're working in a corporate office or they're just surrounded by dysfunction to where it feels normal. I'm sure if you had the adults in your surroundings and your friends were all doing it, that doing these hard drugs at 13 probably seemed not only normal, but fun. When we're around other people who are doing the same things, same with the corporate life, right? When we're around other people who are doing the same things and accepting it, and that's normal, it is so hard to begin to think different thoughts, even if we're feeling really dissatisfied on the inside. I'm really curious how you broke out of that, specifically with the corporate world, because so many people are like, well, it's got a paycheck. And I can see that coming in. And I'm wondering what you did or felt that shifted that for you.
It's actually more interesting how I got out of the drug scene than it is the corporate world, but I'll cover both of them as quickly as I can.
Perfect.
So the drug one was the catalyst really to real change in my life. So about 18 years old, I think I was just turning 18. I was like, okay, I've got some decisions to make here. I continue down this path, taking MDMA, ecstasy, smoking weed, not really doing that well at anything other than taking drugs. I was very proficient at that. Or I make a decision here and I change the environment because I knew the environment was kind of the thing that was keeping me in the same routine, you know, because I was with those people and that's what you did to fit in because I just wanted to fit in. You know, I was a young kid at that time. You do these things to fit in and feel part of something. So I was a DJ at the time and I was playing some nightclubs. And then this opportunity came up in the Middle East, actually in just outside of Dubai, but we'll call it Dubai because everyone knows where Dubai is. And it was an opportunity to go and open up a club there, be a resident DJ. And I thought, this must be a sign because one, I'm a DJ and two, I know that you can't take drugs out in the Middle East because you'll get in trouble. You probably go to prison for 10, 20 years if you get caught with it. So I was like, if I'm going to make a change, this is my opportunity. I've got a ticket here that I could take and just leave the country, leave everything behind and go to the Middle East. And that's what I did. At 18 years old, I decided to leave my friends, leave my girlfriend, leave my family and go to a country that I'd never been, to meet people who I'd never met, to work in a place that I'd never been to before. And that was like the catalyst that changed it for me. As soon as I got out there, I was like, okay, cool. I've got to change now because I'm in a different environment and I can't do what I was doing before. Now, I'm not saying that I completely turned everything around in an instant because there was still alcohol. So instead of drugs, there was alcohol. I was drinking a lot, but I just stopped doing those hard drugs. And then when I came back to the UK, it was like new friends, new environment. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to university. And I didn't never wanted to go to university, but I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to actually get an education now that I've got my head screwed on. I messed up school. Now I want to make up for it. Went to university, worked harder than anyone else, finished first class degree, top of the class, best result out of 3 universities. And I was like, wow, actually I can do this. I can make something of myself. I don't have to just be that person who I thought I was. And so that was the way out of that environment. And then the corporate environment, it just happened that we stumbled across this individual that had an opportunity. Again, I'm a very like opportunity aware person. I see opportunities everywhere, You are big on the law of attraction and manifestation and stuff like that. I feel like things like do manifest themselves when you're looking for them. And like when you're looking for an opportunity, you're looking for an out, it happens. That's how I operate. I'm a delusional optimist. Anyway, this opportunity came up to actually set up this business for this American guy. And he basically gave us $1 million to set up a business here in the UK. And me and my college mate or university mate basically were both in corporate roles in the real estate industry. And we decided to hand in our notice pretty much in the same week, take this $1 million from this American dude and set up this ecom business in the UK. We flew out to America and we spent a week there basically taking notes and really understanding the inner workings of his US business, came back to the UK with that $1 million, basically built another business like his from scratch and took it from zero to $2.7 million in turnover in 2 years.
Wow.
And that was it. That was the way out.
I think it's really interesting because when those opportunities were offered to you, was it an immediate yes? Or were you like, oh, well, I've got this safe, secure situation, or I've got this steady paycheck and that's a big risk? Like, where was your head at with that?
Corporate one was actually the hardest decision I ever had to make. And I know it was the hardest decision I had to make because I was making good money in the corporate. I was making 60, 70K pounds. So that's like, I don't know, $80,000 US. And I was straight out of college,
Yeah.
And for someone who doesn't think that they can do much because you've like not really done much up until that point, it's a lot of money. When the university called, they were like, hey, we're just checking in with the alumni to see how everyone's doing post college, or you call it college, right? I call it university.
Yes.
Same thing. So I'm adapting for you. So like post college, they call you up and they're like, hey, how are you getting on? And they ask you a bunch of questions and they ask you how much money you're making. I'm like, yeah, I'm making like £65,000. And they're like, did I hear you say 65,000? They're like, yeah, what? And they were like, wow, that's a lot of money. Because they were surprised that we're making that much money because I was in sales. I was just selling and making commissions. So it was a hard decision for me to make because it was like I was making money that all my peers and people like that were in college with me would have killed for, right? They were making like 30K, maybe even 25K. I was making like double, triple what they're making. So on paper, it looked awesome. So I was tossing up this idea and I was like, I'm making great money. Yeah, I'm really unhappy. I actually took a day off. I drove to where I used to grow up. And this was at the time 2.5 hours away. Okay. And it's where I used to take drugs. I drove there for some reason. I don't know why I went there, but I drove there feeling like it would give me clarity. I walked up into this quarry. It's like where they make slate. So I used to live in Wales where there were big quarry mines. I walked up into these mines and I literally was just pacing there for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours with this massive weight on my shoulders. And I was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Like, do I leave? Do I stay? Do I leave? Do I stay? And the deciding factor for me was, what if? What if I stay and my friend from college goes off and sets this company up with another friend and they turn it into a massive success and I'm still in this place where I feel like I don't have control. I'm making good money, but I'm not happy. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a gamble here. I'm a risk taker. So I was like, you know what? Let's flip a coin. And I just flipped the coin. I was like, I'm going to do it. And I left. And it wasn't an easy decision to make, but I was like, you know what? It's going to be okay. I'm going to figure it out. Worst case scenario, I go and find another job. Like what's the worst that can happen? Didn't have kids, didn't have a mortgage, didn't have much clothes. It was just like me, little responsibility. Now's the time to do it. And thankfully I did because that then set the trajectory for my whole business career. So.
What would have happened if the coin would have flipped the other way?
I would have stayed in the corporate and
you were like living on fate a little bit.
Yeah. So it was go set this business up or just stay where you are. Like those are your two decisions. It wasn't look for another job. It was just like stay here or do this. And the other one seemed more compelling and exciting. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Kind of like drugs, right? It's like, could be dangerous, but let's do it. It's an adventure.
I love that you use what ifs in your favor because a lot of people who are listening have that history of doing the negative what ifs. Well, what if I do take this opportunity and I lose everything or I'm out of a job? And I love what you just said because we can catastrophize things all we want. But the reality is that everything's figure outable. And even if that crashed and burned and you lost all your money or whatever the case would be, worst case scenario, you just find something else. And I think there's a level of like trust in yourself that you have to do that, right? Is you have to be able to say, okay, even if everything goes really wrong here, it's probably fine. I can still probably figure this out. Have you had trust in yourself all along? Because you have this wave as you're talking of like once you decide like you're good, you're going with it, you're gone. And I'm curious if that's always been part of you of like trusting yourself.
I think what I am good at is I don't focus too much on the past and don't worry too much about the future. So I live quite present, like very present. My girlfriend actually gets quite upset with me sometimes because I don't have maybe the same level of empathy as other people, because I just don't like sit in emotions very long. I'm just living in the moment, enjoying this moment in time. I don't live in regret or worry about what I did do or worry about what's coming or what's not coming. I'm just like, you know what? Let's just like see how it goes. It will figure itself out. And I just know that like everything I've done up until this point, I've been okay. I've not died. I've not got sick. Well, I've got sick, but I've not had anything catastrophic happen. I've still got friends. I've still got family. I've still got people that love me. So it's like when you break it down, nothing bad has really ever happened. So it's like, okay, like my history does show, if I do look at it, that things are going to be okay. And I just have like this blind faith and I just go for it. And I just don't stress too much about being somewhere or being something or having to do this or having to do that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. In, I don't know, 100 years, no one will know who I am. You know what I mean? Maybe if I leave a little bit of a legacy, I write a book, maybe some people will read it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be dust in the ground, just like everyone else. I'm going to get buried next to significant people and insignificant people. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I don't know what happens after this. So I'm just going to enjoy today, this moment, this call. And that's it.
I love it. I think the present moment is one of the most powerful and really the only place that we should be. I know there is, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? I have a really hard time with that too. I'm a very like present in the moment person. I want to be locked into what I'm doing. I want to be locked into the conversations of the people I'm with. But it also helps me flow way better because it helps me follow my intuition way better. And I wanted to ask you about intuition in a minute, but it helps me follow my intuition better because if I'm so in the moment and I feel called to do something, like I was just creating a little video series because I just felt like I had to, or I wanted to, and it just like came up for me. And so when I'm trying to plan strategically, I'm planning from a place of being somewhere else. And so not to say that planning's not important to some level, but it helps me flow when I'm in the moment and following that like inspired action. Do you feel like you connect with your intuition or your intuition guides you in the work you do?
I think it does to a degree. Like I was looking at hiring someone recently, not as like an employee, but as like someone to help us, like a consultant. And I would say that like my intuition was the deciding factor of not hiring that person. Like I got on the call, I had a conversation for whatever reason, everything sounded great on paper, but I was just like, you know what, something about this, I don't feel like this is the thing, or this is what we want, or this is the person. And then the opportunity then presented itself as it always does, right? It then led me down a path of finding something better. And so I do believe that I do use my intuition, and I believe that we can all tap into this intuition as well, where you have like these, I don't know what you call it, gut feelings, or you have just like this vibe, some people call it, Yeah, I think I do use it. Like I am a very logical person because I'm a pragmatist. So everything is very logical, but I do lean on those feelings sometimes, and they typically don't steer me wrong. Like I can call things that don't seem right when they come up. And I think that's what you'd call though emotional intelligence. But then also that's a paradox because sometimes I don't have empathy. So I don't know, like we're not perfect, but
I mean, it sounds like you found a way to live in your life in a way that makes sense to you and brings you the most joy. And I think
yes.
that's all we're all trying to do is trying to find our own way. And so I'm listening to talk about not feeling overly emotional. I'm like, how do I, whenever I feel like a hot mess, I'm just going to tap into your energy. I'm just going to channel Alex's energy a little bit because I'm like a very emotional person and
That's
I
your
love,
strength. That's your
yeah,
strength.
that's my strength. And it's so funny that two people who, share these conversations can have such different things that work for them. And so this is just a really like solid reminder to be like authentic in who you are, however that shows up, and that it's not bad, wrong, or different if it's something you can learn to tame and love about yourself. I think those are two things, is even taming the logic a little bit and not being too far logical. And for me,
Yeah.
not being too far emotional. I have to remind myself that, okay, what's the action that comes after having a response? But one of the things that we were chatting about before you came on that I actually really want to bring forward, and this actually full circles back to what you said in the beginning about power of like making decisions. When you're focusing on helping businesses grow and helping them make decisions to get into their power in their business, what do you help them focus on? What are some things you would steer them away from in order to do that successfully?
Great question. I love this because my guiding principle and one of my big philosophies with business is it's 50% strategy and tactics and it's 50% mindset, how you think, how you show up, how you feel, right? Or like physiology or biology, because at the end of the day, I'm working with typically one single business owner who's responsible for their entire business, or maybe a business owner with a team, but they're still responsible for the business. So they mentally need to be in the best possible shape to win and succeed. If they're not, then they're not going to have the best success. Just like an athlete, right? If an athlete is not thinking right, he's not winning races or winning matches. He has to think in alignment with the outcome that he wants, which is thinking like a winner so that he can operate like a winner. And the same is true of business because it's a sport at the end of the day. You've got a million competitors and there's so many different variables in the game. So a lot of the things that I try and help clients with is thinking about like, how are they showing up for themselves and what are they doing for themselves, not just the business, but themselves. What does their routine look like? What does their mental hygiene look like? What are they consuming or what are they not consuming? And one of the biggest things that I notice is people often overlook the importance of supplementing on the right things. And what they're often doing is trash eating the wrong things. And what I mean by that is they're maybe consuming things that are just not healthy, maybe opinions of people that don't support their growth, or maybe social media, or maybe the news. The news is a big one, right? Because if you look at the news and you scan through the headlines, the articles, and the stories, 80, 90%, maybe more of it is negative, not positive, right? It's very negative. Why? Because negativity sells. And so if that's all you're consuming, that's the only thing that you're putting into your mind, which is not supporting your overall outlook and the mindset necessary for you to think right, act right, operate right as a business owner. So I'm trying to get them to think about what they're putting in and what they're maybe consuming that could be causing some damage, you know? And I think the news is a big one, in my opinion. I think like today, if you don't need the news because it's not something that's going to make you money, is going to support your business, like a trader, for example, they need the news. They need to know the geopolitical, the economic conditions in order to make trades. Like if you're not a banker or a financial advisor, or your life doesn't depend on knowing what is happening in the news because there's maybe a war going on, then try and drown it out and shut it out. Because I stopped listening to the news maybe 5-6 years ago, probably one of the best decisions I made for my mindset, you know, because you can consume a lot of great content, a lot of positive stuff, but if you're just polluting it with loads of bad stuff, you're undoing all the hard work that you're putting into like shaping a good mindset. And that's probably a big thing that I think a lot of people could evaluate and potentially drop without very much effort. And then the second thing is, once you've learned, okay, what can I remove? It's then like, what can I add instead? So if you take something out, add something in it instead to fill the void or fill the gap. I learned this from James Clear, Atomic Habits, probably the best coaching book in the world. You will know because he's big on behavior change and he's a behavior change scientist, something along those lines. He's good when it comes to behavior and the mindset, right? But he talks about if you're taking something away like a bad habit, swap it with a good one. So if I was going to take the news away from someone, instead I'd swap it with something that is better. And for me, that could be a podcast like yours. It could be a book like yours, right? It could be a YouTube channel that you like to listen to. And also I'd look at like, what is your preferred method of learning? So you can do these questionnaires where it'll tell you if you're a visual learner, if you're an audible learner or auditory learner or a kinesthetic learner. And then you find out which one makes most sense for you as an individual. And then you maybe use that mechanism to consume the right things that are going to support the mindset that's going to support your business or your career or your relationships. So if you're taking something out, swap it with something else so there's no void and you don't just then go back to the news. It's kind of like why the vape pens came about. Take cigarettes away, replace it with the vape. But actually that was bad for bad because vapes are just as bad as cigarettes, arguably, because now they're getting a higher dosage of nicotine, but maybe a lower dosage of chemicals. But they're still two bad things. Anyway, that's a different topic.
First of all, I love James Clear so much that an entire chapter in my book is dedicated to summarizing his work. So yes, a huge fan of that. And it's so funny because my dad came into town maybe a month or two ago and he was like, how do you not watch the news? Because he turned it on. I'm like, no, we don't do that in this house. You can watch that on your phone, but it's not going to be like blasting all over my experience. And the reality is that everything that I've needed to know about has found me in some way or another. If I really needed to know about whatever's going on in the world or in my environment news-wise, it would find me. I've never missed anything.
I say that if it's really important, like someone in my family will tell me. If it's like immediately important, they're like gonna let you know, because it's hard to ignore something that's like right in front of you. And you could say it's like you've got no empathy, you don't care about others, why are you not concerned about all these different things that are going on in the world? I'm like, I've got my own shit to deal with. I've got so many problems. People around me have so many problems. My clients have so many problems. I have enough problems to deal with. It's hard to take on every problem in the world. And so you have to pick your problems, your own problems, your clients' problems, your family problems, your children's problems. That's enough problems for any human being, not to mention everyone else's problems that are going to be broadcast to you by the news. And so it's not that we're not willing to accept these problems around us. And it's not like we're being averse to like confronting problems or helping those around us, but you have to draw a line like of like trying to take everything in, because it can be really detrimental to those around you as well. And it's the same with my grandparents. That's all they do is they watch news, but it's because it's all they fucking know. They don't know any different.
And in the past generations, I think the news was more reality. And useful.
And it was useful.
And there wasn't social media where it was quicker to go around or texting. And so I, see the programming of all of that. And it's funny that you mentioned that. Is it, I always go back and forth. Like, am I being uncompassionate? I had a session with a client the other day and she was like, I don't even know how you're still going with everything happening in the world. And I'm like, I just want to know if you would go back through time and pull up every murder case and study it for the day and sit in it. And the reality is that our light is best served at finding whatever positivity we can in the world and sharing that, finding whatever kindness we can, making eye contact with strangers. Like, your impact, unless you feel compelled to donate money or resources or whatever you have, or you feel compelled to join the military or relief or Red Cross or whatever, your impact is in your community as your best self. And you can hold compassion and love and send light to the hard things going on in the world, but there will always be something hard and awful going on in the world. And so what Alex and I are talking about today is your focus is spend time, hold compassion, and then say, what can I do in my life, in my circumstances? Because to me, if we're like thinking of like dark versus light, evil versus good, every moment we spend feeding into the fear and the guilt and the privilege, and every moment we spend in that heavy, dark energy, we've now become it. You can't be sick enough to make somebody well. You will never be sick enough to make somebody well, but you can be intentional about the interactions you're having in your life and I really do feel on such a deep level that the interactions you're having in your life of being kind and loving and showing up for people and being thoughtful, that has such a massive ripple down effect, even if it's not where you would like to see it, maybe overseas or whatever the case might be, it matters still.
Totally agree. And in order for us to be good coaches, good leaders, good business people, like we have to look after ourselves fundamentally, not just physically, but also mentally, right? In order to be able to keep pushing on, driving business forward, driving our careers forward, because that then has a positive ripple effect on other people. And the more we maintain that positive outlook and mindset, the more it rubs off on other people. And so we are doing our part by trying to maintain this way of thinking that actually is a positive thing for society as a whole. And that's how I see it, right? If I can protect how I'm thinking, anytime I come into contact with someone who is not thinking on the same frequency or as positively and they're a bit down, I'm in a better position to lift that person up. Now they feel good. And now maybe they're going to go back and speak to their family in a different way, or their son in a different way, or their cousin in a different way. And there's a ripple effect to that way of thinking that affects not just you, but those people around you. And that's what I see when I'm trying to avoid these things that are not supporting the way I think.
And it sounds like you're bringing this into every area of your life and the clients you work with in business, because it does matter what you're thinking about, what you're focusing on, and exactly what you said, what you're consuming, whether that's social media, the news, or otherwise, whether you're engaging in online arguments, like whatever you're doing. This is just a really good sign to control what you can and be intentional about who you are in the world, because it really, really matters. I've loved this conversation with you.
Been
This has
awesome.
been fun. Do you have any last bits of advice? And I really want to kind of go into that space for people who are really wanting to take the jump, take the leap in some area of their life and maybe start the business or leave the corporate world or whatever the case might be. What was some final words of wisdom that you would give them?
So I gave a talk actually recently at my client event. So we did a big event in London, and the focus of that talk was really about how precious everyone's time is and how we really don't know how much time we've actually got. Could be a day, could be a week, could be a month, could be a year, could be a decade. You could set the record for the longest life in history. You just don't know how long you're going to be here, right? And so if you take a little bit of that and you bring that to the present moment and you appreciate that life is long, but also can be quite short, then you're going to seize more opportunities to do the things that you really want to do, or the things that are truly going to fulfill you, or the things that are going to make you happy, and the things that are really going to make sure that the time that you do have here was one that you enjoyed. Because again, we don't know how much time we've got. And I think above everything else, time is our biggest resource. And it's cliche, but it's true, right? It's cliche, but it's true. And if someone is just not sure, should I do this or should I do that? Use the what if. What if you don't do it? And what if like that could have been the best decision you could have ever made? Sometimes you've just got to have blind faith and leap and maybe use your intuition, like you like to say.
I love it. I think that's really powerful. And like what you said earlier, at some point you're going to be dust in the ground. And why not? Why not go for it? Why not take the jump? And you're living proof of that working. And I know people are going to want to further connect with you. Alex puts out insane, fantastic content online. So where can people connect with you and how can they work with you?
So we did a podcast, didn't we, last week? So that should be coming out probably in the next few weeks. So if your people want to have a listen to that, because I think it's a great conversation, that would be a good place to start. It's probably going to be available in a couple of weeks on the Remote Coaches podcast. So that's the Remote Coaches podcast. We have loads of great guests. We've got your friend Justin Cavanaugh on there, Chad Burnham, who you probably are familiar with from the event that we did out in Virginia. And then feel free to connect me on social media, Alex C. Povey, just as you pronounced it perfectly.
And I will make sure to drop all of the links in the show notes so you can get connected. And I'm so grateful for your time and your wisdom today. This was a lot of fun.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to get a copy of my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down to Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power, just about everywhere books are sold. Join the Comeback Club for exclusive access, masterclasses, and more. And I always love to know what you think, so make sure to shoot me a DM or leave me a review. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you. But first, if you could, leave me a review or share with a friend. Thank you.